Your grandmother probably told you money can't buy taste. In Newport's Gilded Age, they begged to differ. Along Bellevue Avenue, where America's industrial titans built their summer escapes, coal money flowed like water through limestone foundations and marble halls. While Boston looked to London and New York chased Paris, Newport's elite created something uniquely American, a world where summer cottages rivaled European palaces, where a single party's flower budget could feed 100 families for a year. In this playground of the powerful, the Elms emerged as something extraordinary. Electricity hummed through its walls when other mansions still flickered by gaslight. Music from dueling orchestras drifted through rooms where presidents whispered with Kaisers, while in the gardens roses climbed impossibly high toward French-inspired balconies. This wasn't just another mansion. This was architecture as revolution, wealth as art. And yet, when the 1960s dawned and the developers circled like wolves, their blueprints already marked exactly where shopping aisles would replace ballrooms and parking spots would pave over century-old gardens. Sadly, the Elms faced a fate unthinkable to those who had built it. With mere weeks left before the wrecking balls would swing, a handful of preservationists launched a desperate gamble that would forever change how America protects its architectural treasures. At the dawn of the 20th century, as America's industrial titans shaped the nation's destiny through steel, oil, and railroads, one man chose to build his empire on something far more fundamental: coal. Edward Julius Berwind, born to humble German immigrants in Philadelphia, would transform this black diamond of the earth into a dazzling showcase of wealth that still captivates imaginations today. The Elms. Rising majestically from Newport's prestigious grounds in 1901, the Elms wasn't merely a summer residence. It was a bold declaration of arrival among America's elite. Berwind, whose coal empire fueled the nation's unstoppable industrial growth, commissioned Philadelphia architect Horace Trumbauer with a singular vision: create a summer cottage that would surpass anything Newport's old money had ever seen. Trumbauer drew his inspiration from across the Atlantic, modeling the Elms after the 18th century Château d'Asnières in France. But mere imitation would not suffice for Berwind's ambitions. The resulting limestone masterpiece stretched 120 feet by 60 feet, encompassing 50 rooms across 3 magnificent stories. The price tag was a staggering $1.5 million, equivalent to $28 million in today's currency. What truly set the Elms apart was its fearless embrace of the future. While other mansions hedged their bets with backup systems, Berwind's creation boldly embraced electricity without any safety net, becoming one of the first homes in America to do so. The mansion even boasted one of the nation's first electrical ice makers, a modern marvel that left Newport's social circle buzzing with excitement. Within these walls, Allard and Sons of Paris worked their magic, crafting interiors worthy of European royalty. Their canvas showcased priceless Renaissance ceramics, 18th century French and Venetian paintings, and Oriental jades. The crown jewel was the Grand Ballroom, 41 feet by 49 feet with soaring 19-foot ceilings, where Newport's elite would soon gather in unprecedented splendor. The mansion's 1902 debut remains legendary in Newport's social history. 400 of America's most prominent figures attended a soiree where roses adorned every corner, vines climbed to the second floor, and lights transformed the estate into a fairy tale realm. 2 orchestras filled the ballroom with music, while the Newport Band serenaded guests throughout the grounds, creating an atmosphere of unparalleled luxury. Edward Berwind's guest list soon included names that shaped world history. Theodore Roosevelt and Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany walked these halls, cementing the Elms' position at the pinnacle of American society. Yet beneath this glittering surface of success and social triumph, the Berwind family harbored complexities and contradictions that would ultimately shape the Elms' destiny in unexpected ways. The question wasn't if the Berwind family would leave their mark on Newport society, but rather how long their reign at the Elms would last and what price they would pay for their place among America's elite. Behind the limestone facade of Newport's grandest summer cottage, the Berwind family saga unfolded like a tale of two distinct eras, bridged by an extraordinary woman who would become Newport's last torchbearer of the Gilded Age. Edward and Sarah Berwind had established the Elms as Newport's social epicenter, where a single season's entertainment budget surpassed $300,000. A sum that would make even today's millionaires pause. The couple's mastery of social spectacle reached its zenith during their legendary housewarming celebration in 1901. 400 of society's finest found themselves immersed in a wonderland where roses carpeted every corner and flowering vines scaled the mansion's walls to the second floor. As two orchestras commanded the ballroom's atmosphere inside, the Newport band's melodies drifted across the illuminated grounds, creating an enchanted evening that would be whispered about in Newport's parlors for decades to come. But when Sarah Berwind passed away in 1922, the Elms might have lost its soul, had it not been for Julia Berwind, Edward's younger sister, who stepped into the role of hostess with an independence that defied the era's rigid social conventions. Julia wasn't content to merely maintain traditions, she rewrote them with her own distinctive flair. In an age when Newport's grand dames were chauffeured in their luxury automobiles, Julia scandalized society by taking the wheel herself, navigating Newport streets with a freedom that raised eyebrows and dropped monocles. Yet beneath her rebellious spirit lay a heart that recognized the Elms' potential for joy beyond society's narrow circles. She regularly invited children from Newport's working-class Fifth Ward for milk and cookies, bringing warmth to rooms designed for far more formal occasions. As the Roaring Twenties gave way to the Great Depression and World War II transformed America's social landscape, most of Newport's elite quietly scaled back their grandiose lifestyles. But Julia Berwind stood firm against time's tide. She maintained a full staff of 40 servants, preserving the Elms as a living museum of the Gilded Age well into the middle of the 20th century. For nearly 4 decades, Julia Berwind protected not just a mansion, but a way of life that was vanishing across America. Until 1961, when her death at 96 marked the end of an era, she remained one of Newport's last links to its golden age. The Elms stood as the final cottage to operate in the grand manner of those bygone days. But Julia's passing would set in motion a chain of events that would threaten not just the Berwind legacy, but the very existence of the Elms itself. As the mansion's fate hung in the balance, the next chapter would prove that sometimes the greatest threat to history comes not from time, but from progress itself. Time can be crueler than winter storms to Newport's grand mansions, but in 1961 it wasn't time that threatened the Elms. It was arithmetic. With Julia Berwind's passing, the mansion's fate fell into the hands of her nephew, Charles E. Dunlap, who found himself inheriting not just a property, but an impossible equation: how to maintain a 50-room monument to the Gilded Age on a 20th century budget. The first domino fell in June of 1962 when the mansion's heartbeat, its precious contents, went under the auctioneer's hammer. Each bang of the gavel scattered pieces of the Berwind legacy to the winds. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York swooped in to claim the mansion's finest paintings, leaving empty frames and bare walls to echo with memories of former glory. These weren't merely furnishings being sold, they were the very pieces that had witnessed presidential conversations and royal visits, now destined for new homes far from Newport's shores. Dunlap, facing the stark reality of the Elms' astronomical upkeep costs, made a decision that sent shockwaves through Newport's preservation community. He sold the property to a syndicate of New York developers. These weren't men who dealt in dreams or history. They traded in square footage and return on investment. In their ledgers, the Elms' value lay not in its limestone walls or French-inspired architecture, but in the prime real estate it occupied. The developer's vision for the Elms had no room for Gilded Age grandeur. Where the Berwinds had once hosted society's elite, these businessmen saw potential for a shopping center. The ballroom that had echoed with orchestral music could soon be parceled into retail spaces. The gardens where Julia Berwind had served milk and cookies to local children were measured for parking spots. Architectural drawings were replaced by demolition plans. The mansion that had taken 2 years to build would need only weeks to demolish. The same limestone walls that had been carefully carved to mirror French chateau elegance were now marked for the wrecking ball. The developers moved with the cold efficiency of men accustomed to transforming yesterday's landmarks into tomorrow's profits. In the summer of 1962, the Elms stood at its most vulnerable moment since its construction 60 years earlier. The mansion that had survived world wars, the Great Depression, and changing social tides now faced an enemy it couldn't charm or outlast: the relentless march of commercial progress. The wrecking crew was scheduled, the permits were being processed, and the countdown to demolition had begun. As Newport's preservation community watched in horror, a small group of dedicated individuals realized they had mere weeks to accomplish the impossible. With no guarantee of success, they launched a desperate race against time that would test not just their resources, but the very values of a nation struggling to balance progress with preservation. Saving a Gilded Age mansion requires more than good intentions. It demands swift action, deep pockets, and perhaps a touch of madness. In 1962, as the Elms teetered on the brink of destruction, the Preservation Society of Newport County demonstrated all three. The clock wasn't just ticking, it was racing toward a finale that would either mark a triumph of preservation or witness the collapse of Newport's architectural crown jewel. The mathematics of salvation proved daunting. The society needed to raise $116,000, a fortune in 1962, with barely enough time to organize a bake sale. Yet sometimes the impossible becomes possible when faced with the unthinkable. 27 donors, understanding that history rarely offers second chances, stepped forward with contributions that would echo through generations. These weren't just checks being written, they were votes being cast for the soul of Newport itself. Each dollar represented a belief that the Elms was more than limestone and luxurious appointments. It was a physical chapter of American history that couldn't be rewritten once erased. As the funds accumulated, the developer's demolition schedule loomed ever closer, creating a race between preservation and destruction. When the Preservation Society finally secured the property, they didn't pause to celebrate their victory. Within an astonishing 3 weeks of acquiring the Elms, they had transformed the private mansion into a public museum. It was a feat comparable to turning an ocean liner into a cruise ship while still at sea. Necessary systems had to be modified, staff had to be hired, and tours had to be organized, all while ensuring the mansion's architectural integrity remained intact. But saving the Elms was only the first chapter in an ongoing saga of preservation. The mansion's rooms, once filled with priceless artifacts and furniture, now echoed with emptiness. The auction that had scattered the Berwind collection to the winds presented the society with their next monumental challenge: how to restore the Elms to its former glory when its treasures had been dispersed across the continent. The Preservation Society embarked on what would become one of the most remarkable treasure hunts in American architectural history. Their mission wasn't just to fill rooms with period-appropriate pieces. They sought to track down and reclaim the very items that had made the Elms legendary. From university conference rooms to private collections, from art dealers to auction houses, the search began for pieces of the Berwind legacy. This wasn't merely about furnishing a museum, it was about reconstructing a moment in time when American ambition and European craftsmanship had combined to create something extraordinary. Each recovered piece would serve as a bridge between the mansion's glittering past and its reimagined future as a public treasure. As the Preservation Society began this monumental task, they discovered that saving the Elms from demolition had been merely the opening act. The real challenge lay in breathing life back into rooms that had witnessed some of the Gilded Age's most magnificent moments. A challenge that would require decades of dedication, millions of dollars, and an unwavering commitment to perfection. Like piecing together an elaborate puzzle across decades, the restoration of the Elms has been a testament to patience, persistence, and the power of institutional memory. Each recovered treasure tells a story not just of the Berwind family's opulence, but of the Preservation Society's dedication to recapturing lightning in a bottle. Their quest has transformed the Elms from a rescued shell into a living testament to America's Gilded Age. The dining room table's journey epitomizes this remarkable restoration saga. Discovered being used for mundane meetings in a Brown University conference room, this magnificent piece was reclaimed and returned to its rightful place, where it had once hosted discussions between industrial titans and world leaders. In 2016, the drawing room regained its soul when original furniture was tracked down and brought home, while Edward Berwind's bedroom was made complete again with the return of his original bed and dressing commode. Perhaps no achievement better symbolizes the Preservation Society's commitment than the reunion of the Elms Venetian paintings. In 2004, they raised $250,000 to recover 4 of the 6 smaller works that had been scattered by the 1962 auction. 8 years later, they completed this artistic puzzle by acquiring the final 2 Sebastiano Ricci paintings for $650,000, restoring America's largest collection of 18th-century Venetian paintings to its original home. The Society's attention to detail extends beyond furnishings to the very fabric of the mansion. The red silk wall coverings in the sitting room, reproduced in 1985, whisper the same elegant stories they did during Julia Berwind's tenure. The sunken garden, restored in 1998, once again offers visitors the same serene beauty that the Berwinds enjoyed. Even now, in 2024, artisans work to preserve the ceiling mural above the grand double staircase, ensuring future generations can marvel at its splendor. But perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of the Elms' modern incarnation is how it has democratized the Gilded Age experience. The innovative Servant Life Tour has pulled back the curtain on the hidden world that kept these mansions running. Visitors now walk the same servants' quarters where butler Ernest Birch and his wife, cook Grace Rhodes, once managed a staff of 40. These tours illuminate not just the mechanics of maintaining a great house, but the complex social dynamics, immigration stories, and labor disputes that shaped early 20th century America. The Elms designation as a National Historic Landmark in 1996 formally recognized what preservationists had long known, that this mansion represents far more than the sum of its architectural elements. It stands as a bridge between centuries, connecting us to an era when American ambition seemed limitless and European craftsmanship reached its zenith. Today, as visitors wander through rooms where coal barons' dreams once mingled with European aristocracy's traditions, the Elms continues to evolve. It's no longer simply a monument to Gilded Age excess, but rather a living classroom where past and present engage in constant dialogue. In saving the Elms, Newport preserved more than a mansion. It secured a piece of America's soul, ensuring that future generations can still walk through history's front door. And now we'd like to see you in the comments. Have you been to the Elms before? Or would you like to? We can't wait to hear from you, so don't be shy and be sure to leave a sentence or two below. With that said, thanks for joining us for another episode of Old Money Mansions, and cheers until the next time.